Hey, deserving listener, it's time for episode 5, in which we follow Darcy on the show 90 Day Fiancé. I'm going to react to it. I'm a couples therapist that has been treating couples for over 20 years, and I also train couples therapists, and I've been doing that for over 20 years. And whenever I watch these kinds of reality shows where they involve romantic relationships, I always have a lot to say. So let's see if I have something to say.
To have him meet my daughters for the first time is a huge step. But before I have that happen, I'm really hoping we can have an open and honest heart-to-heart about our issues.
Fantastic, Darcy. Awesome. Heart-to-heart about your issues. Yes, yes, yes. Let's see if you can manage this. I hope you can. I believe in you.
Darcy and I need to talk about all the fighting and her behavior on social media. She's insecure. So when there is frustration or when there is an argument, she chooses to rant on social media, and I don't want to be associated with a partner that behaves like that.
So again, I can't diagnose anyone on these shows because they only present 0.01% of their overall behavior. They're on camera, they're probably acting a little different. The producers might be influencing things, they could be editing things, so everything I say has to be taken with that in mind. However, if I am to educate the public and also other therapists, because a lot of you are clinicians as well, on the human behavior, using these people as examples for our lives, to reflect on our lives, can sometimes help. So when we see that Jesse just said that, he says, I don't want to be associated, I can't remember the exact word, but the words that he was using, but essentially he's saying that Darcy uses social media a lot, and I don't like that. So there are some indications that Jesse had some issues growing up. Well, let me just put it this way, because I don't want to diagnose Jesse. And more the talent on these shows are watching me do these videos, and so I want to be respectful to them if they actually are watching this, because it would be mortifying to me if they watched this and they felt hurt by me. So I will say that for people who have certain behaviors growing up, certain behaviors like this that Jesse has, that I've treated before, that I have had the luxury of the full assessment of their lives. Let me talk about those people. So they grew up with enough difficulties growing up: abandonment, drug abuse, violence, domestic violence, abuse, these kinds of things, or just a set of those things. And they, early in life, had to make a choice about how to cope with that. And one of the things available to kids, we're talking 18 months, 36 months old, is to consider yourself superior to other people. Now, we call this narcissism, but on the internet, everyone's using narcissistic personality disorder in a wrong way. Not everyone, but a lot of people are. Because it's a hard concept to understand. In my experience, most clinicians don't understand what narcissistic personality disorder is. That's just anecdotal, but some research has actually found that, I can't remember the exact numbers, but an astonishing percentage of clinicians in my field have been found to not understand personality disorders in general, and particularly narcissistic personality disorder. Research has found that. Anyway, so when we are treated badly, we have this Sophie's choice where we can either believe it's our fault or it's their fault. And I'm going to very oversimplify this, but for some people, they say it's their fault, not my fault. Well, when you decide at the age of 18 months that it's their fault and you cannot depend on other people, then you become extremely reliant on the self, overly reliant on the self, because you believe through evidence that you cannot depend on other people, and thus you have to depend on yourself. And yet you're 18 months old, 36 months old, and you know that you are not capable. Well, how do you defend yourself against the terror of the world, knowing that you have to depend on yourself and you can't depend on other people? Well, you start to develop what we call a grandiose sense of self. You start to develop being arrogant and being narcissistic about yourself. Because if you really believe the reality is that you have some good qualities, but you're not the master of the world, you have to concede to the fact that you can't depend on other people, and you can't really depend on yourself because you have bad qualities too. And then you're completely lost. So you build up this grandiose self and you have to really solidify it, but it's a veil on top of a vast sea of terror. But it has to be very strong and it has to be very consistent. And so you might post a lot of pictures of yourself looking super hot all the time, because to get that accolade, that narcissistic supply, keeps that veil stable. And whenever there's a lack of narcissistic supply to keep that veil going, then it starts to get a little shaky, and then the ego has to look into the abyss and see that they are worthless and they can depend on no one, and they've never really even been able to depend on themselves, which is terrifying. So when they will date, they will often date in a way that gives the vibe that they're superior. They will look arrogant. They will look pathologically independent. They will not seem very vulnerable. They will seem like they don't really have any emotions. They will come off as being very strong and very capable people, not because they are or not because they're not. It's not really an issue. The issue is that they have to be in a frequent state of painting this picture, not only for other people to see, but for themselves to see. They're trying to prove to themselves more than other people that they are capable and okay and they don't need anyone.
She chooses to rant on social media, and I don't want to be associated with a partner that behaves like that.
When you have all those defenses and all those worries, and you start interacting with someone that does a lot of social media stuff, then that could be very challenging to that veil, because that person who knows you and has seen all your good and bad sides starts to tweet about you in the way Darcy has been doing, then that really starts to challenge that very thin veil of that notion of I'm perfect and I do everything right and everyone loves me all the time. Because if she's going to out me to the world that I'm a bad person and other people are going to believe her, that not only kind of bothers me because I don't like people talking crap about me, but that's terrifying because that breaks that veil, and now I have to look into that emptiness that I've felt since I was 18 months old. And so one of the things that you'll see people do in that position is they will say, no more social media, or you can't talk with your friends about me, or what did you say to your friends? Did you talk shit about my friends? Don't talk shit about me to your friends. You'll see that kind of desperation. It will be received by the Darcys of the world of like, you're being controlling, which is true and not cool. You shouldn't control other people in your life in that way. But the reason for it, in my experience clinically, always comes from that desperation that is trying to cover up the deep abyss of worthlessness that they feel on the inside. Again, I can't diagnose Jesse with that, but the people that I've worked with who have had those kinds of behaviors, eventually we get there. So we'll see how this plays out.
After you, miss.
But before moving on, I just want to give a caveat that I usually give, which is to say that these videos should not be confused for clinical treatment and that you should always get a therapist in your area. You deserve to have a therapist. A lot of you are emailing me saying, how do I get a therapist? I want a therapist. You deserve to have that therapist. And there probably is a therapist in your area or available to you on online platforms who will be perfect for you. So believe in that and shop around. It might take 10 therapists to shop around before you find the right one that's good for you. So go through that process, find that person, and once you find that person, hold on to them because having a good therapist for you is sometimes hard to find. Ask your friends about their therapist that they found. Sometimes that's a good way of finding someone that might fit with you as well. Anyway.
No matter what, ups and downs, we can figure it out.
True.
We can. We have to fight for our love, I feel. I feel like no matter all that crap, we can get through this.
Yeah. But a lot of crap you created yourself.
So not a good start to the conversation, Jesse. Even if you believe that to be true, that you can predict that's not going to go over well. How about just concede? And I see this in my office sometimes. Just concede. Yes, we both need to work on things because it's impossible that everyone's perfect. And so even if you believe like I only need to work on 1% and you need to work on 99%, just say, yes, we both have things to work on and I have these things and you have those things, so let's work together on those things. You don't have to say something like that, like, yeah, we do need to work on things, but 100% of that is you. I mean, it's mean and obviously not a functional thing to say, and in line with a lot of the other things that I've been saying.
When next week we have an argument, that you go off on social media
I
again,
just want to get my outlet to have a voice.
In one fight, she thought we broke up. So she posted on Facebook. She stated that she was over it and I could other bitches. So that caused the because you can only imagine how people perceive that. Hey, what did Jesse do?
So as I said in the previous video, there's nothing wrong with Jesse being like, hey, that stuff you were posting on social media, it really bothered me. It really hurt my feelings. And I wish you wouldn't air our dirty laundry in public like that. It's pretty awful. So could you please tone that down a little bit? Could we talk about things before you post them on social media? Could you just talk with your friends and not the entire world about our problems? I don't do that to you. When you do things, I don't post on social media that you did something bad. I don't think you would appreciate that. So could you please not do that? It hurts my feelings and it scares me because I'm worried you're going to do that every time we have any kind of problem. You're going to post it for the entire world to see, and it just bothers me. It hurts my feelings. Could you not do that? That's not what he's saying. That would give Darcy a chance to go, oh, he's vulnerable. He has feelings. I care about him. I don't want him to be hurt. I don't want to scare him. So, okay, next time I have an urge to go on social media, well, if I'm about to press, post, that's going to hurt his feelings. I have a heart. I don't want to hurt his feelings. I'm not going to do it. That's how you shape other people's behavior, is by helping them understand your core emotions in response to their behavior. A way of shaping the behavior of your spouse is not to just tell them what to do without any reason for why you're doing it. This is also a principle in parenting, incidentally. A lot of you parents might hear some familiarity in this, in the way that you parent your kids or the advice you've been given. When you go to a kid and you say, it's time to go to bed, and the kid starts to pick up things and throw, no, I don't want to go to bed, and they pick up a thing. And if you just yell at the kid, no, you're going to go to bed, and you grab the kid and you shove him into bed, that's essentially the style that Jesse is doing, is that forceful style. Now, you would be right because the kid is supposed to go to bed, but a more effective way to do it is to explain to the kid, when you throw things, that really hurts my feelings because you could hurt someone, and you could also break something that is very important to me. Kids care about their parents for the most part, depending on the situation. Age appropriate, they care. At the very least, it helps them to understand, like, oh, they're not telling me to do this because they're trying to ruin my life. They're telling me to do this because I can affect other people. My behavior affects other people. Oh, okay. And that's part of that developmental thing. Now, kids take a long time to kind of learn that lesson and really internalize that. And, over time, they progressively care more about other human beings and take care of them. But when you explain it that way, it helps kids to understand, oh, okay, I understand why they're telling me not to throw things. I understand why I have to go to bed. The reason why I want you to go to bed at 8 o'clock is because in order to be healthy, people need a certain amount of sleep, and younger people need more sleep than older people. And so I want you to be healthy. And when you refuse to go to sleep, I get worried about your health and your mood tomorrow, because if you stay up late, you're not going to get the sleep you need, and I worry about you, and I care about you, and I want you to be healthy, and I want you to be happy, and getting a good night's sleep is a part of that. Now, not all kids will respond to that, but at least you're giving them an opportunity. The same goes for adults. For Jesse to just say, like, I don't appreciate your social media, you got to stop. That's analogous to just grabbing the kid and shoving him into bed and saying, you are going to do this because mommy said so, instead of Jesse saying how he feels about it. So hopefully they can get there. We'll see. And then for Darcy to respond to Jesse also by saying how his demand makes her feel. Anyway, we'll see if they can do that.
I feel like I need to
So
understand
you
why.
want to talk about your man and portraying him as a cheater?
Absolutely
Once again,
not.
when
I'm
you're
not.
angry.
No.
Ruining
That's
my
not.
business and my
How
life.
would I ruin your business and your life? I never said that you were a cheater.
I'm a personal trainer. For her to speak like that on social media platforms, I lose business because of that. If she doesn't take responsibility for her actions, then this relationship has no future.
So whenever I hear that phrase, my romantic partner needs to take responsibility for their behavior, it's red flags, yellow flags for a person who is over-functioning. Listen to the previous episodes, with Darcy and Jesse, where I talked about over-functioner, under-functioner. It also is a red flag for that veil of grandiosity that the person has to uphold in order to function, because it's like, I need you to change. You need to take responsibility. I'm better than you. I'm superior. I don't need to change. You need to change. You need to answer to me. And when I have a thought, you need to bow to my thoughts the way a parent and a child are relating to each other. It's not the best way to parent a kid, but it feels that way. And so there's a lot of concerning behaviors here. There's nothing wrong with saying, I would like you to apologize for making it seem like I was a bad person on social media. Nothing wrong with Jesse asking for an apology. Nothing wrong with Jesse stating that he was hurt by that. But to frame it like you need to take responsibility is a very powerful message of the way that he thinks about her. And for Darcy, she's already feeling belittled by previous things that's happened, and for him to have that energy with her, it's like, man, he's made a conclusion. He's telling me what to do. He's not listening to me. He's not giving me a chance. That's not going to feel good to Darcy at all, and you can see it on her face here.
Keep lying, baby. Own your mistakes.
I am owning it. What do you want me to
yes, I
say?
made a mistake.
I apologize to you, but I never said that you cheated. Don't make me admit something that I didn't do. I'm not being incriminated against because you want me to say certain things that you're thinking in your head.
I'm not thinking that in my head, honey. So, I will go to Amsterdam, no worries. I'll get my bags at the hotel. Bye-bye.
So, not a good development. They're right back to where they started. And again, listen to episode 4 or my number 4 Darcy video, because it all kind of leads up to this idea of a dynamic that Jesse is really trying to create, where Darcy decompensates and Jesse can be left thinking, I'm the superior one. She's the one that had the meltdown. I didn't have the meltdown. I was being reasonable. I was telling her reasonable things. She couldn't agree to it. There's something broken in her. I'm fine. She's not. And both people are low on differentiation, but they're trying to work themselves into the overfunctioner, underfunctioner. Darcy, we'll see what she does with this. But if the past is anything indication of what's going to happen this time, Darcy and Jesse will get back together, and they will go back to that configuration where he is the dominant one saying what to do, and she's the one trying to fit into his demands while secretly resenting it. So the other thing, remember I said about how when we're young, we're given that Sophie's choice between, is it them or is it me? Well, for the Darcys of the world, what they will sometimes conclude is it's me. So they're going through difficulties as a child, and they're like, well, it has to be one of us because something's wrong here. And what some people will decide is like, well, it's me. It's my fault. The reason why all this chaos is happening is because there's something deeply wrong with me. And they will idealize other people. They'll sort of protect others from the responsibility of what's happening. And what this does is it says, well, it must be my fault. Now, why would someone want to blame the self? It seems like that would be counterproductive. But when bad things are happening and you say it's your fault, you preserve the notion, the fantasy, that your caretakers are actually good people and that they're stable and that they will save you when you need to be saved, even though they're not doing that. But it's in the same way that the narcissistic person has a veil of grandiosity over the self that they have to uphold and supply all the time, to the person who decides, to the preoccupied attached person, they have decided they have to put a veil on other people. Other people are good. They can be depended on. They can be, they will save me. I need other people. I can't do things on my own. So I need to appease them. I need to manage them. I need to figure out, and I'm always going to try to prop them up. And when that veil gets challenged through this kind of behavior, then that starts to break down. And then the person is left to the notions that they were terrified of when they were 18 months old, that they can depend on nobody. And so if you're going to make this work, you have to allow me to idealize you. You have to allow me to believe that you're perfect and that you can save me from these terrible feelings that I'm feeling. So that's how these two personality types can sometimes fit together. Of course, I can't say that Darcy and Jesse are like this, but I can say that the behaviors they're depicting through this TV show have been seen in many of the clients that I've assessed over the past 20 plus years along those lines. There are other conceptualizations for this behavior for sure. I'm just providing the one that comes to my mind first.
The love of my life. I feel like he's shutting me out, and I don't know what to do.
So this is, it breaks your heart, right? Breaks my heart to see Darcy be treated pretty badly, in my opinion, and to have her be hurt, which is awful, and then seemingly to beat herself up. And that's part of that preoccupied attachment position. If you want to learn more about that, become a patron of the podcast and listen to my 10 plus hours on attachment theory. A lot of people have said that those 10 plus hours are pretty clearly educative about attachment theory, particularly preoccupied attachment. And that notion of that he can save me. He's a perfect human being. If I can just make him love me, then this perfect person, then I will be okay, because I cannot live on my own. I need someone that I idealize to save me. And then once I get that validation and once that perfection is close to me, then I will be secure and I can relax. And of course, that's a fantasy, but that's the fantasy that was developed at the age of 18 months, 36 months, that made sense to their life back then, but doesn't make sense as an adult. And so as things are happening and she's getting more frustrated and she storms out, she doesn't know what to do, she's still in this state of like, now she's really falling into the abyss, because before she had this notion of like, well, I have this perfect thing that I can depend on who loves me, and their shining light will give me the strength to get through the day. And that shining light has now become a cesspool of terribleness, and now I'm completely alone. And I learned at the age of 2 years old that I cannot depend on myself because I'm a bad person. Look at the way I've been treated in my life. It's because I'm a bad person. So I have nowhere to go. I'm alone and I'm falling apart, and that seems to be what's happening here. I can't say for sure, but she's certainly falling into some kind of terrible narrative of that there's something wrong with her, which we've seen before in previous videos.
I feel like maybe he doesn't want to be with me. I don't know. Maybe I feel like he's been thinking that for a while, but wanted to come here for an opportunity.
I'm done.
I want to see him embrace the kids so I know we could plan for a future. Being in a long-distance relationship again, it's been really difficult.
So I feel like we missed something between the last scene with Darcy and Jesse and this scene. They're back together. Did they make up? It seems like they did. The other thing that I'll point out that we don't have the privilege of is, one, they probably shoot a lot of footage of these couples and they only show a very small minority of that footage. The other thing is that all their time together, Jesse and Darcy, is not being recorded. So we're not privy to that. And this is one of the things that actually a lot of friends will suffer from. When your friend comes to you and complains about their spouse, and they do that repeatedly, then you end up having this narrative of like, man, their relationship sucks. But what you don't see is maybe the 90% of the time when they're neutral or even having a good time together. Because friends don't usually call up their buddies and go like, man, me and my wife, we're getting along really well now. Let me tell you about all the good things we did. Usually when friends reach out to other people, it's because their relationship isn't going well. So when I see this show, it makes me wonder, when the cameras aren't there, do they get along in a really functional way that makes it so that they can weather the storms that they show on this TV show? Because they have a lot of storms. So I wonder if there's a lot of good things that are happening that for whatever reason isn't on camera, or they're not showing us.
Over the last few months, we make up and break up almost every day.
It's amazing.
They make up and break up almost every day. Okay, so now a lot of people out there might be saying things like, well, that's not functional, that's not gonna work. So I've talked about this in other videos, but it's worth repeating at this moment, is that there are different styles of relationships. So you have this style of relationship where there's a lot of validation. You know, two therapists might be in a relationship like this where it looks extremely functional. You have another style of relationship where they are very subdued and there's not a lot of overt love and passion, but they also have no conflict. And that relationship will look a little cold, but they won't look like there's a problem. But there can be a problem in that relationship because there isn't enough good things that are happening. There's like a lack of anything happening between the couple. And even though they only have a fight one time a year, there's not enough good things that happen that year that offset the bad thing. As I've talked about in other videos, John Gottman here, a researcher in Seattle, has been researching couples for decades, brought couples into the lab and found this ratio of 5-to-1, meaning that you have to have 5 good moments for every 1 bad moment. How do you quantify good, bad moments? It's hard to say, but generally speaking, it's a good guideline to follow. And so it's not the number of bad moments, it's the ratio of good to bad moments. So in a quiet couple, a couple that doesn't fight a lot, if they only have 2 good moments in a year and 1 bad moment, then they have a ratio of 2 good moments to 1 bad moment. And that relationship has been found through research to be likely to break up in the future. Then you have a couple like Jesse and Darcy where there's a lot of things happening. And they have, say, 1 breakup every day. And say that constitutes 5 bad moments every day. But let's say they have 25 plus good moments every day, where there's a lot of love and a lot of connection and a lot of passion. Well, according to research, that couple is likely to survive into the future. We would look at that and be like, you're having all those bad moments every day? Well, that's not going to last. But research shows if they can have a lot of good moments and some bad moments, but a lot more good moments, then research shows that they can survive. Not always, but they're just as likely to survive, according to research, as the couple who has 1 bad moment a year and only 5 good moments in the year. We would look at the Darcys and Jessies and be like, they're doomed, and all these other couples are going to be fine, but that isn't always true. I have a hard time believing that Jesse and Darcy are having enough good moments to offset that amount of negativity. But like I said, we're only shown what the show shows us. So we're only shown what the show shows us. And we don't have any idea what the full range of their relationship is like. Anyway, let's see if they speak to that at all.
Despite the fighting and disagreements, deep down inside, I feel like we have a deep connection that is unbreakable.
Okay, so why does she feel that? Does she feel that because of actual behavior between the two of them, where that deep connection is actually realized in relational dynamics back and forth, where he looks into her eyes and says, I love you and I want to be with you forever? Or is it just a fantasy that she's upholding because she needs him for the reasons I've discussed earlier? So I just want to comment on guys like this. I used to live right near the Space Needle, to be very stereotypically Seattleite. I would walk to work actually right underneath the Space Needle. My work, I lived on one side of the Space Needle, and on the other side of the Space Needle was my office. And Monday through Friday, I would walk through the park. That Seattle Center is where the Space Needle is, and there's all these rides and all these other kinds of things. But anyway, I walked by a guy who played an instrument like this, but he had it hooked up to an amplifier. This guy doesn't look like he has it. It's a loud instrument anyway. It's a beautiful instrument. But the guy that in Seattle, and if you are in Seattle, you know this guy because he goes all over. He goes to Seahawks games. He goes everywhere. You've probably seen him before. So this guy had this amplifier, and he would play this instrument all day long. In the morning, he would be playing. At the night, when I came home from work, he'd be playing all day, all night. It was nice, but it's also an atonal instrument, and it's, to some extent, you could say that it's more advanced than Western scales because they use notes in between the notes. Think of a piano. They will play notes in between the keys that you can't actually even play on the piano. And there's a beauty to that, but it's an acquired taste. And when it's amplified and just blasting into your ears as you're trying to walk to work in the morning, it annoyed the crap out of me. So whenever I see a guy like this on the street, I just want to say, like, I hope you only play like every now and then, because if you're playing every day, people are going to get crazy with you. I didn't say all my reactions would be to the people on the show. So anyway, let's move on.
After all the drama, I'm nervous about meeting her kids. I love her, but Darcy's insecurities cause a lot of conflict, and that makes me doubt the entire relationship sometimes.
Not an accurate conceptualization, Jesse. It's not just her insecurities. It'd be wise to recognize your own insecurities as well. To say that it's all her fault is probably not an accurate conceptualization, especially what we saw on camera earlier, right?
I feel now is the time for them to meet you. I think it'd be a great opportunity, but I would definitely not want my daughters to see us, get in any sort of argument or anything like that.
So I hate to be a pessimist. I'm going to hope for the best. This is going to be a tense situation. It's a hard situation. At the best of times, this is going to be tense. And so the two girls are going to feel like it's an awkward situation. They're going to feel like it's an awkward situation. And what is required is that for Jesse to do his best to be vulnerable and to be human and to be like, I don't know what's happening here. I'm going to depend on the daughters and Darcy to kind of help me to feel comfortable. And that is not a pattern of behavior and a mode that we have seen yet in Jesse. I could see a scenario where Jesse detects discomfort. Like, I could see a scenario where Jesse does some initial efforts to bond with the daughters and does, a okay enough job. Something goes a little wrong and Jesse pulls away and starts to expect people to come to him. And then Jesse starts to create this narrative again that he's perfect and everyone else sucks and it's going to be all Darcy's fault. And I don't know. I hate to be pessimistic, but I could just see that happening. Who knows? Maybe it'll go well.
Happy birthday, my twin flame. Oh, baby, thank you.
See, it's this kind of stuff that can offset all the bad moments that maybe they don't show us enough of. Just speculating.
It's crazy to know that at the point where I am in my life right now, to now be in a relationship where there is 2 kids involved, it's very overwhelming. So we got a boat trip planned, for Mommy's birthday. Yeah? All right, let's go, guys.
So I'm always wondering what people judge badly about these situations. And one of the things I can imagine people judging, I don't know if they would, is for them to say, oh, he's only 24 and the girls are 11 and 12. That's gross. How could he be a stepdad to people that are just 12 years younger than him? Ew, I don't like that. And that's very short-sighted. There are plenty of families that have these sorts of age differences that work out just fine. There's nothing empirically, obviously, for sure wrong with this situation. It usually has to do with other factors, like how do people talk about their feelings? How differentiated are people? I find that people on the internet in particular will really gravitate towards age differences and sort of heuristic behaviors that they look for that indicate broader things, rather than actually looking at the full situation. Can Jesse be a good stepfather? Absolutely. We don't have any evidence that he is going to be good or bad, but there's nothing about him that inherently makes this a bad situation. Other than the issues we've seen in the past, he will likely also do to the kids, which obviously wouldn't be good. So I don't know. Hopefully that doesn't happen.
But I feel like they should just take it slow
to see if they really want to take that other step of getting married.
All right, well, that does it for episode 5, in which I, as a couples therapist, reacts to Darcy's situation on this TV show. Everyone should know that if you've only discovered this on YouTube, that our main thing that we do at Psychology in Seattle is a podcast that is audio only, and that's all on YouTube as well, but mostly people listen on their earbuds from their phone. So if you go to a podcast app and you find Psychology in Seattle, you'll get access to all of our episodes. We have over 1,000 episodes, maybe over 1,100 episodes. I'm not sure what number we're up to yet. We've been doing this podcast for 12 years, so it's a lot of episodes. And as always, as I said earlier, if you become a patron, you get access to our best episodes. So please do that, and please take care of yourself and take care of others, because we all deserve it. We really, really do.